Well, hello from London and welcome to our latest FlightGlobal webinar in association with the Singapore Airshow. Today, we're going to be discussing the maintenance, repair and overhaul sector in the Asia-Pacific region and the opportunities that come from airline recovery, from new technologies, and from market trends such as the rise in e-commerce. Now, no one watching this webinar today needs me to remind you that the aviation market in most of Asia Pacific has been affected particularly badly by the events of the past 2 years. Strict border controls and restrictions on travel persist in much of the region, and the emergence of the Omicron variant has only increased uncertainty. However, there is a lot of confidence that the success of vaccination programs will allow countries to begin reopening in 2022, and that pent-up demand for flying will lead to a resurgent airline sector, and with it, a flourishing MRO market. But the shape of that market could be very different to what went before. So to debate some of these issues, I'm joined by an eminent panel of experts, including from our sponsor, Pratt Whitney, its Vice President for Asia Pacific Customer Business, Mary Ellen Jones. Now, Mary's joining us from Mexico, where she's traveling at the moment. So she's up even earlier than I am in the UK for this webinar. Now, Mary Ellen has had some problems with connectivity from her hotel room, so she's joining us by audio only, but obviously we'll still be able to hear what she has to say. Mary Ellen, I expect that given that you're much of your responsibility is Asia Pacific, you're used to having remote meetings at strange hours.
Yes, I'm afraid so, and I do apologize, Andrew, to you and the audience for my difficulties now. But yes, hopefully you can hear me loud and clear, and I'm very happy to be here with you.
Absolutely, thank you for joining us. Our next guest is from a would-be market disruptor. Mahesh Kumar is the Chief Executive of Asia Digital Engineering, the engineering department for AirAsia. Now, Mahesh, who took on the role just over a year ago, has been charged with turning the business into an MRO provider driven by data and technology, and focused very much on the third-party market. So really trying to disrupt the MRO market in the region. Tom de Hetere is from another company that likes to think it does things a little bit differently. AJW Group. Tom is its Chief Sales Officer and has a job of developing unique solutions to suit the diverse business models of its airline, OEM, and lessor customers. And in addition to his operational role, Tom also heads IT and digital transformation projects at AJW. And finally, Richard Kendall became Chief Commercial Officer at HAECO Group in February this year. A veteran of HAECO's Hong Kong-based business Swire Group, he's a long track record of working for MRO businesses across the region and beyond. One of the world's leading independent MROs, HAECO's competencies range from P2F conversions and aircraft seating to parts manufacturing and engine services. So before we get going, just a reminder that we're live for the next 55 minutes or so, and we welcome questions from the audience to our panel. So please use the Q&A icon rather than the chat icon to ask your question, and we'll get through as many of these as possible in the next throughout the course of the webinar. So I'm going to start with a question for all our guests. The region's aviation sector, as I said earlier, has been on the floor for more than 20 months. How do you see the recovery trajectory in 2022? And does the MRO sector have the capacity to ramp up if there's a faster than expected increase in flight hours? Mary Ellen, perhaps I could start with you on that one.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I would say from a Pratt Whitney and IAE perspective, we're fortunate in that our products right now are well represented in those market segments that are coming back kind of most reliably from COVID. Single aisle airplanes like the Neo family and kind of the original A320 family with the GTF and the V2500. Freighters, I think we're going to probably talk, about the freighter business later in the webinar. PW4000 engines power a lot of freighters that are doing quite well these days. And then our colleagues at Pratt Canada, are very prominent in turboprops. So that increase in utilization naturally then lends itself toward increasing demand in MRO. And we are seeing a pickup there in our, facilities in Asia Pacific and across the world. And of course, our facilities in Asia service, worldwide customers, not just those in the region. So as other parts of the world may be coming back more quickly, we can certainly service them, in our Asian network. And our confidence in the continued health and the growth in the market, I think, is demonstrated by the fact that we have continued really to invest and expand our MRO capacity in Asia Pac. Right before COVID hit in late 2019, we announced that China Airlines had joined the GTF MRO network, and in fact, they just took a couple of weeks ago their first Neo. And even in the midst of the pandemic, we announced, additional expansion of our network, including two network partners in China, one at Amico and one at NTU Zhuhai. So, we continue to invest, to expand. We've hired, several hundred people through the end of the year this year at our Singapore facilities. So we see, the growth continuing. We remain very optimistic, and we want to make sure we're ready for it.
Thank you. Richard, from HAECO's point of view, I guess we said that the industry has been on its knees, but there have been areas and places where there has been more activity than others. Domestic China market, for example, the domestic Indian market has come back very, very strongly. International traffic, of course, is still struggling in most places. How do you see it from where you are, and what's the outlook for 2022?
Yeah, thank you. So I would say in answer to your question, it's very, it's a game of many halves. And you alluded to the fact that the narrow body is recovering more quickly than the wide body market, and I think that's definitely true, particularly driven by the increase in domestic travel in, as you say, India, China, and the US, and to a certain extent in Europe. Although I think the one thing that we know, and looking forward to 2022, we can certainly expect, is that the recovery will not be smooth. The key word will be flexibility in terms of being able to adapt to changing circumstances. You mentioned Omicron as being a sort of current sort of influence on the market, and certainly we'll have probably a few of those influences as we go forward. In HAECO, we have our businesses is split between narrow body, principally in the US. We're very dependent on narrow body operators, and that recovered pretty quickly towards the end of even sort of very early this year. Whereas the wide body market, as everyone knows, is principally driven by the long haul international travel, intercontinental travel, which is recovering much more slowly. But we have quite a number of our customers that are bringing or preparing their aircraft to come back into service. And so, even for our Asian-based MROs, similar to the scenario that Mary Ellen painted, we have a lot of customers from outside the region that bring their aircraft into the region for maintenance. So we're seeing quite a lot of demand for our facilities, in our base maintenance facilities in China and Hong Kong on that basis. The one area which is very, very depressed at the moment is the line maintenance business, particularly here in Hong Kong, with the strict quarantine requirements here and limited transit traffic to other areas in Asia. International passenger traffic is way, way down. But in part, that's been mitigated by the cargo market because with the absence of volumes of belly cargo capacity on the intercontinental passenger aircraft, of course, the dedicated cargo fleet has been very busy. And we've seen commensurate uptick in the amount of light and heavy maintenance on cargo aircraft resulting from that swing upwards in that market.
Thank you, Richard. Tom, from your point of view, AJW is obviously a global company, but specifically, how has the Asia Pacific market been impacted for you, and how do you see 2022 going?
I pretty much resonate what the others have said. We've seen more robustness, obviously, and quicker pickup on the narrow body. Our product is the one that comes often after a base maintenance event on the larger MROs. But we've seen a need to that flexibility that Richard mentioned. We've seen a need to be super flexible with the contract structures. That I think is a benefit of being a family-owned company that has this very lean structure. We were able to switch off and work with customers to just really pause for a while and let them recover and switch on in a joint a joint process. We've seen a lot more parking than we thought. We thought we'd see a lot more storage, which I guess you saw this drop in because we follow the base maintenance as well, because that drives material into the process, and that's what we provide as well, in addition to contracted services. What we've seen is this very quick gap, everybody canceling their slots. But I think if I'm reading Gamico, Heiko, Richard is there, ST, I think they're about 80-90% back to their capacity load, which is great. And like we said, it's on the back of a lot of narrow body, a lot of freighter conversion. So we see also us having to look a little bit better at more sunset platforms like 767. That has been a little bit of an adjustment that we needed to make. But then the rest is growth. Well, yeah, you have this patchwork of governments that are going to switch on and off travel lanes on a bit of a panic around a certain version, justified or not. I'm not an expert on this, but it seems that it's always a bit of a unpredictable path. That's something that for us is something we're a bit worried about. We see a little bit of a smoother, even though now the UK has restrictions, we see a smoother pickup in anything that's a little bit west of the Middle East, and that's obviously where we are now putting a little bit more focus on, in terms of material, in terms of contract support. That's where we have to be right now. Now, is it going to recover? Again, crystal ball, but you have thousands of aircraft still on order, like the CO and the Neos, which is one of our core products. There's more than 4,000 of each, and 50% is going to go to Asia Pac. This is obviously going to keep growing, and just I think the unpredictable piece is just that COVID, like Richard mentioned, that point-to-point traffic. We see the base maintenance, all that kind of stuff coming back, and people that the slots that have been cancelled now, all the C checks have been kind of processed. Everybody's ready with their fleet, but I think it's just that point-to-point traffic, that line maintenance piece of work that for us also drives work for the contracted services, drives work through the component MRO. We see that as a bit slower. I think we're going to lose another year.
Okay, thanks for that overview, Tom. Mahesh, some might say your business, you've just launched it. Awful timing because it's right in the pandemic, but some might say great timing because the only way is up for the industry from here. How do you see, tell us a little bit about the business and how you see 2022 going.
Okay, for the year of 2020, especially for the region of ASEAN, Southeast Asia, we can say that definitely the growth will be massive, especially for the narrow body base maintenance. One of the biggest reasons is you can see the recovery. This part of the world was slower than anywhere else. And one thing you should have realized that the airlines around this region have started to extend their leases, meaning to say they are extending the life the aircraft. Previously, you can see the average age of the planes around this region is about 6 to 12 years. Now they have extended to 18 to 24 years, which means more upcoming checks will be there. That's one of the biggest advantages. So I can say that even though the recovery was slow, but I can't think of any MROs around this region which had available slots. I know airlines which are looking for slots, including our associated airlines as well. We are looking for slots as well, which is quite challenging to get. So in terms of recovery, we can be very bullish on that, especially on the base maintenance side. In terms of line maintenance, yeah, I kind of agree that it will have a slow recovery. That's depending on how borders are opening up and all like that. And another advantage for this part of the world is it's unlike Europe, where they have the summer and winter season, where during the winter season, where the aircraft will be going for base maintenance check and all like that. But this part of the world, it is not like that. Throughout the whole year, you will have gradually all the aircrafts going for checks. Of course, we started during, I would say, during the height of the pandemic, but even with that situation, we can say that the growth is very promising, especially around this region. And I'm sure you can see a lot of new airlines are coming up in Southeast Asia, which is actually a very positive news for the MRO industry.
Okay, great. Well, let's stay with you, Mahesh, because you are a new business, or relatively new business in what you're doing. And let's talk about disruption, both in terms of new technologies and new business models. We've been hearing for a long time about the potential of big data analytics and predictive maintenance. And, we've also seen developments such as using drones and robots for doing inspections of aircraft and so on. So, Mahesh, maybe just talk me through some of the areas where you think the MRO sector is going to see some disruption over the next few years.
Okay, I mean, of course, in terms of the age of the entity, we are pretty new, but we have about 20 years of experience working, with an airline which has been here, for the last 20 years again. We count basically ourselves out of Asia, the airline. So we have the data for the last 20 years of how the planes were working, what are the issues. I mean, we can say that we have an excellent knowledge on the A320. So that is where we're going to translate it into the predictive maintenance and all like that. But what the challenge, I mean, I'll be very transparent and upfront over here and all like that. The elephant in the room is actually, put it this way, most of the airlines who have the power by the hour arrangement for the components. And the way it works is the coverage should be when it fails, it will be covered. But now, due to predictive maintenance, you're going to remove it even before it fails. So there's a gap over there, which you got to convince whoever the service providers, who's going to overhaul your components, and the OEMs and all the OEMs to say that, look, this is going to fail at some point of time. And that is where the data is going to work and all like that. And of course, we have introduced, we are working on drone inspections and all like that for the structural inspection. And one thing we got to highlight is the support which the authorities and the regulators are going to give. From the MRO perspective, of course, we can think as high tech as possible, but at the end of the day, we need the support from the regulators. We know very well that we've been talking about e-tech logs for ages, but there are still authorities who's not accepting that on the e-tech logs and all like that. One of the thing is like, the thing is for any airline at the end of the day, the expectation, I mean, we are from part of the airline, so I can say this very frankly, the expectation from any service providers or MRO is all they want is for their maintenance cost to be as low as possible. The turnaround time should be as quick as possible. Of course, without compromising the safety of whatever the services are. So with that note, the MRO, whoever the service provider, they should come up with a key how to find that, again, without compromising the safety of it. We can, of course, we are looking into the for example, on aircraft painting, we can look into the automated system of getting the aircraft paint, and then in terms of structural inspection, there's a lot of things can be done in a robotic technology for the structural inspections and all like that. We would say that the path is there. We are definitely working on it, despite ADE, or there's a lot of MROs are working on it and all like that. But the real key for that is for the authorities to be supportive, to be approved, and to join hands to get this happen. That's the reality of it.
Okay, thanks, Mahesh. Mary Ellen, maybe I could just come to you first, just from the engine MRO side of things. What innovations are you seeing? What are you getting most excited about in terms of disruption coming down the line in the sector?
Well, I certainly echo Mahesh's comments about predictive maintenance. That's something that we are very excited about and getting much more into. The GTF, for example, has I think about 40% more sensors on it than a V2500, and it's giving out 4 million data points over the course of a 2-hour flight. Now, that's a lot of information, and we're not close to being able to digest all of it yet. That's what we're working towards. But obviously, what happens with this is customers want to maximize speed and minimize surprises. So these predictive maintenance techniques allow us to do that, right? So that's key. And working with, increasing our digitization capabilities and working with partners will help us get there faster. But certainly, we're also using robotics. We're using 3D printing in some of our component shops. And even wearable technologies like smart glasses, we're starting to use more and more, which are great for training and troubleshooting. And we even recently conducted, with the FAA's help, an audit of an engine because of travel restrictions. And so the wearable technologies got us through that. So I think, maybe, COVID, these travel restrictions may be helping us to speed some of these things along. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of technology going into it right now.
Thanks, Mary Ellen. And that's an interesting point about how, perhaps one of the upsides of the downturn has been that it's spurred on innovation in some areas. Richard, talk to me a little bit about where HAECO sees the MRO business going in terms of disruptive technologies, innovation.
Yes, I would sort of echo both Mahesh and Mary Ellen's comments in a way. I mean, on the subject of wearable technology, I mean, we've recently been able to implement airworthiness directives by using that type of technology to have our technicians working on aircraft with remote support from an OEM to implement those SPs that arise from those ADs. And that's something that one wouldn't have done in the past. I mean, you'd have had the specialist engineer fly out and oversee it and train our people, but we've been able to do that with remote support. Similarly, in other areas like in terms of drone inspections, in terms of other type of techniques, we're involved in lots of other technologies to assist in supporting the MRO process within the hangars, and also in terms of predictive maintenance. I see a lot of benefits from that, both in terms of from the operator's point of view, in terms of being able to minimize AOG situations, in terms of reliability of their aircraft and equipment, and also from a provider point of view, in terms of being able to reduce inventory levels in terms of maintaining those aircraft and components in airworthy condition without the necessity to have such large stocks on hand to support unexpected failures and so forth in service. Mahesh referred to the regulators, and it is a bit of a handbrake on our industry because the regulators are conservative. They wish things to be not proven once, but many, many times before they will accept the changes to their processes. So we have to move at their pace, but on the other hand, that's no excuse for not pushing the boundaries ourselves and pushing ahead with developing these opportunities in order to be able to move the industry forward. In particular, given that the MRO industry generally is such a labor-intensive business, I think it is beholden on us to find new ways of doing things in order to reduce the reliance on human input, because I think everywhere in the world there's a shortage of manpower coming into the industry, and also being able to retain people in the industry is a real challenge, with many other maybe more exciting opportunities available for the people that have those skills.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Tom, from AGW's side of things, what are you excited about in terms of technology?
I'll touch on a few points inside industry and on one crazy one outside. So we've taken the view that very much like Richard said, there's a talent war. You've got all these people with an engineering, let's say, wish and wanting to go into that field. We find that we are competing with everything that is coming on the digital space, right? You have Web 3.0, everything blockchain, DeFi. You got Web 3.0. I mentioned, crypto. All these kind of things are really just pulling a lot of people away, and we've taken the view that we would keep that investment in digital steady during the pandemic, because we didn't want to lose that talent, and we just kind of took the view that we'll find a lot of things to change, and we've done. We also wanted to keep that culture there, because I think Richard and especially Mahesh, and for sure Mary-Ellen, that is a difficult thing to build up. You have part of your business really just KPI driven, results. You have to have that space, that incubating capability, that creativity, that willingness to fail and experiment to really drive significant transformation. Now you're talking about what we've done in our MRO and technique. We just, during the worst time of the pandemic, we just clean sheeted processes and restarted it all in a digital format, built around the cell, built around the maintenance expert or the mechanic or the operator. We just built it all around the talent with portable devices, tooling, RFID. So everything was just really almost like a pit stop design built around them. And that was, I think, a smart idea. I think all of us have done this in the downturn. Just take a view at process and just absolutely take it apart, put it back together again. That's what we were able to do. That worked really well. We've done all the other stuff, of course, remote training, these kind of things, and we've put a little bit more effort in the digital planning of inventory. So we have in our product there's a lot of inventory that is often unused, and the better we provide planning models to the customers that use their own inventory through our system, the better it is for them. But of course, we have in the back end a whole flow of piece parts. So I think using machine learning for these processes was actually quite a good learning curve. So that was kind of our vision on this industry as it is today. But to just put a crazy one up there, one of the things that we are slowly looking at, because you asked the question, Asia Pacific regional, what are the things that could be changing a little bit in this region? I'm not talking next year, but I think in 2, 3, 4, you have this whole new industry around eVTOLs coming up, and I know that a lot of people are thinking, well, yeah, there's not even one flying. But I think it, from our point of view as an aftermarket support, we are really watching this space. 100 companies building prototypes, a huge amount of money being invested. The big players, Airbus, Boeing, all have multiple strands of development in that space. The OEMs are heavily involved, and we think that is a very, very nice regional product. These vehicles don't have any range, right? And then that by design gives you a nice let's say patchwork of projects to support in region. And I think that is something that we are quite excited about. It's a bit left field for the time being, but that's one of the things that I'm following up.
No, we like to hear about left field ideas. I think I've never really heard a discussion about the MRO aspects of the whole eVTOL opportunity, and that's it's very, very interesting, because
I can tell you one thing, Murdo, sorry to interrupt. I can tell you one thing. They are very advanced in their thinking. Yeah. The concept of predictive maintenance goes all the way to the production at the OEM with some of those manufacturers of eVTOLs. because they are, they're redesigning. It's a smaller, simpler vehicle, but you can imagine, right? If a failure comes, they're not only going to check the repair later on if was that failure correct, was the algorithm correct. They're actually going to go to the batch at the manufacturer and challenge all those part numbers, classify them as potentially problematic, and take it all apart, Murdo. It's really going to, we've talked to a few of them. It is really quite intense how this is going to work. It's very exciting.
Well, it sounds like something we should be taking a deeper look at some point for sure. I want to move on to another very different trend in the market, passenger to freight conversions. Now, we saw a huge influx of programs in the market over the last 18 months, and a lot of that had to do with the demand for freight that there was because of the reduction in belly capacity as airlines took passenger flights out of the game. And I know this is a big market at HAECO. There was talk that as belly capacity returned to the market, some of that demand for dedicated freighters would disappear. But there's also been discussion that that such as the rise of e-commerce and a lot of that traffic coming from the east, if you like, to the west, that would make up for the rebalancing with belly capacity coming back. Richard, specifically on P2F, how do you see that market?
I think you alluded to a couple of the comments just now. In terms of the trends in terms of cargo carriage, yes, a big increase in e-commerce, and I think that is leading to a large demand for narrow body freighter aircraft, and so what we're seeing in the market now is demand for. 757s are coming to the end or towards the end of their conversion cycle. So now you're looking at 737s and A321s as being the sort of the next generation of P2F conversions on the narrow body side. And we both in our facilities in Xiamen in China and also in the US in Florida are doing quite a number of those conversions, but also particularly in our associate company in Shandong. It was in the news a couple of days ago that we're taking on another 2 lines to go up to 7 P2F conversion lines for 737-800s there. So yes, there is a large demand there. I think for the wide body P2F market, it's maybe a little bit less certain where that's going, because you've got to balance up the demand for P2F with the delivery of new freighter aircraft. So 777s, of course, at the moment, and the impending 350 freighter that's going to be coming on the market. So there are a number of projects going on at the moment around 777 conversions, and also potentially on A330s. We're not currently doing any of those at the moment, although we're certainly keeping close to that market. We were very, very prominent in the 747-400 conversions, and we did 42 of those conversions in our Xiamen facility. So we have quite a lot of experience in that world. But I would say it's a little bit more uncertain on that front. And in terms of the ability, certainly in the short to medium term, for the execution of those conversions to keep up with demand, I think there's a big supply chain bottleneck, particularly around cargo loading systems and so forth, where there are limited suppliers in order to be able to keep up with that demand. But I would say in the short to medium term, the demand is strong. I think looking further out, it's a little bit more uncertain. But I think particularly narrow body driven, the tremendous growth in e-commerce, particularly in developing markets, will keep that demand driving for quite a few years yet.
Okay. Does anyone else want to come in on the P2F or the freight opportunity generally for the MRO sector? Mahesh?
Okay, yes. One thing Richard just highlighted, that the slots for the freighter conversions are pretty impressive, actually. We know that the slots are fully booked and all like that. We are also looking for conversions and all that. So we know the challenge of getting the slots. So in between, what we are recently seeing is like on a demand on a very high demand on the freighters. I mean, name it whatever name you can call it, freighters or zero LOPA or cargo in the cabins and all like that. So the thing is, the demand for the cargo has picked up huge during the COVID period and all like that. But there's some concern from the airlines also. What happens once things go back to normal? Whether do they still need the freighters and all like that? Because if at all they're going to convert the passenger aircraft to freighter, will they need it in terms of long run? So with that perspective, they have came up with the request of converting the cabins. I mean, removing the seats and all like that. That is something which we are seeing quite. The demand for that is also, I would say, equally as high as the P2F conversion around this region.
Okay,
and I supplement on that, because we've seen quite a lot of activity around the freighter market, as it's been coined. And we've issued some STCs ourselves in terms of, from our engineering division, in terms of both converting or enabling freight to be carried in existing passenger cabin configurations, and also removing seats, such as we've done on 777s, and then issuing an STC for that model. But there is some nervousness around that, because EASA in particular are withdrawing their approvals for those type of operations from, I can't remember the exact date, I think it's June next year. So we can't rely on that as being a long-term model that you can switch in and out of. So I think that while it's a good interim solution while we're in this transition phase, I don't think that's a long-term solution to catering for cargo demand.
Okay, Mary Ellen, do you have a view on the potential of the P2F and the freight market?
Well, I guess we're not getting a very lively debate here, Andrew, because there's a lot of concurrence. Because yes, I mean, certainly we see it that way as well. We see e-commerce continuing to grow, maybe not quite as explosively as it has, during these COVID times, but I think a lot of habits have changed, and so the demand will continue to be there. And with regard to the freighters, yeah, that has been a lifesaver for a lot of airlines. I know, guessing they're probably hoping that they can convert those back to regular, PAX operation as things continue to recover. But it's been, as you indicated earlier, maybe one of those upsides of COVID, at least selfishly from our perspective, giving the PW4000 kind of a new lease on life, as it's been very much in demand for freighters, and that again, turns into MRO requirements.
And Tom, from AJW's point of view, how do you play in the P2F opportunity?
Yeah, for us, it's probably slightly different, right? If you look at Richard, designing STCs around a P2F, there's some players here in closer to home in Singapore as well. You're occupying a bay for probably 3 times the length of a seat check, so it loads. It makes a big difference. But for us, if you look at the global fleet, I think there were 200, 250 maybe this year, PAX to freight conversions coming online. Yes, it's interesting. It's fantastic. Extends life of certain aircraft. Allows us to switch on, service for certain products like 767, 75. Yeah, that we were not expecting to do. That's always good. We love to have these challenges from the customer and build them a tailor-made solution. That's all great. I would just say that for us, it is a good momentum. You can wonder about if everything picks up again, is there going to be a competition for that hangar and slot space, that labor that is quite intense. But for us, it's not a shift change. 200 aircraft in a year is not really moving the needle to that extent, I think. But it's of course something that we're very happy to support. But I personally think, of course, if you work in that P2F space, it's of course a much bigger slice of the work that you do.
Okay. Now that brings us on to the environment. Perhaps one of the biggest theme for the aviation industry as a whole and the aerospace industry over the next decade. We've just been talking about P2Fs, which I guess in a way are recycled aircraft, because it's a passenger aircraft that rather than being scrapped is being given repurposed for another use. But I just really wanted to ask you how you see the MRO industry playing its part in the whole sustainability journey that the aerospace industry and the aviation industry is going to have to come through. It's going to be going through between now and 2035, 2050, whatever the horizon is. Mary Ellen, how do you see the sustainability playing in the MRO sector?
Well, we have obviously a big influence on it on the front end of things with, the engines that we developed that are in operation, like the GTF, which has, significant fuel burn savings that translates directly to CO2. So, we were able to have a big impact there. But we also look, we do want to reduce the greenhouse gas footprint of our MRO facilities. So in Asia, Singapore facilities are actually the biggest user of solar power across the RTX, the entire Raytheon Technologies framework of companies. So that's one area. And then, there's things like, of course, what we've been working on for years already, hazardous waste reduction, reduced water usage, things like that are, kind of endemic to any kind of plant operation. So, we're looking at those kind of cornerstone areas, as well as things like solar to make sure we become greener in all aspects of our business.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ellen. Richard, do you have a view on that?
Yes, indeed. I think that, if you look at the industry, of course, most of the airlines are focused on reducing their direct Scope 1 emissions, because obviously that's the biggest contributor from our industry. But like many companies, and particularly publicly listed companies, there is increasing demand also to look up and down your supply chains as to the influence of the supply chains on your business and your indirect emissions through what they call Scope 3 emissions. And we, as an MRO industry, obviously have an important role to play in that for our airline customers. And I think that as far as the MRO is concerned, we use a lot of electricity in our workshops in terms of vehicles operating, ground support equipment on the airports. A lot of those are fueled by diesel, and there's an increasing trend towards using electric powered vehicles. And even in our engine facilities, with the testing regime, there are ways to make the testing process more efficient so that you're using less fuel, and then in time also to convert to using sustainable aviation fuel in that process in order to reduce the direct emissions from our MRO operations. In terms of our component businesses, of course, we would like to look at this as a growth opportunity in terms of improving the repairability of components to avoid scrapping and buying or building new, which consumes resources, of course. So we're looking for opportunities in that space. So I think there are lots of things that we can do, and as a group, we are committed to following the science-based targets, the initiative of our reduction in emissions following the 1.5 degrees centigrade level. And as a parent group, Swire Pacific, our parent company, has committed to zero net carbon by 2050. So there's a lot of things that we are doing and we can do in order to contribute towards that pathway. It's definitely not going to be a smooth sort of linear progress towards zero carbon. And for example, we're in one of our major facilities in China, in Xiamen. The Xiamen airport is moving in about 3 years' time to a new venue. So we've taken the opportunity in designing our new facility at that new airport to incorporate, the most
carbon, waste, water efficient facility that we can reasonably come up with today's technologies in order to make that transition to the new facility. So there will be some gradual improvements that we can make, and also some step changes that we can make as we invest in new facilities and new capabilities.
Thanks, Richard. Mahesh, how do you see the MRO industry contributing to the sustainability efforts of the wider industry?
I would say more on the infrastructure side. If, for example, if the MROs they're going to, build on their new facilities and all like that, they should start using more on the clean energy, which is having the solar panels and all like that. Not many MROs are close to the sea. If there's any MROs which are close to the sea, they can even look into the option of having the tidal energy. We heard that some of the airports are actually looking at that, try to work out in terms of the airports which are close to the sea. They are even working out on the tidal energy. That's something which we can try to see on that. And there's another thing is how we work on the water treatment in terms of when you're working on the engine wash or the aircraft washings and all like that. How are we working on the water treatment? That's something which the MRO side we can look at it.
Okay, and obviously for the airlines and for the manufacturers and the engine manufacturers, Mary Ellen's company, this is there's a huge sort of onus on them. But for MROs, Tom, is there anything that you think that specifically where MROs can contribute more to the sustainability efforts?
Well, my opinion just qualifies for what we do in the component MRO and the associated supply chain that we manage. We've done a lot of the things that make a lot of sense now, but were kind of invisible before. Things like packing. There was this hype with foam packing. And it was fantastic for the robustness of that process. Your damage or your error rate went down dramatically, but then you do a research on that environmental impact, and then you realize that, oh my goodness, this that's not necessarily how it was advertised or how it was told it would be. And then you scrap those and you replace all that with recyclable materials. And I think that's there's more than 100,000 movements a year. That is something. It goes down to very basic things also. Encouraging customers to use the same packaging. It looks like a drop in the ocean, but I think you have to take the business from a very basic level up. And the solar panels are the thing that everybody thinks about. But it's all these movements. Anything that has a large multiplier. Like the number of packages you send. We looked at the sustainability of that packing, and we've changed all that. So that's one of the things we've done. And then, of course, we've done what everybody else does. It starts with, of course, health, things like electrical vehicles in the warehouse. Nobody wants fossil fuel burning stuff. We've done the solar panel as well, and we focus a lot on all the hazardous goods and all the hazardous waste that could come from MRO, or that could come from removed components. That has now follows a very, very new process with an expert company that just that takes care of that for us. So we've looked at suppliers that can do so much more than we could do. So that's roughly what summarizes what we've done.
Okay, thanks, Tom. I'm going to take a question from the audience. This is from, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Mervyn Sirisina. He's talking about now I don't know whether anyone wants to come in on this one, but it's possibly quite a controversial one, about the future of standalone MROs versus airline-linked MROs. And I suppose the broader question is whether, going forward, you can see an industry that's largely based on, MROs with a large anchor tenant, if you like, with a large in-house business supplementing that with additional business, or whether it's the future really belongs more to companies that are able to derive most of their business from third parties. Let's give this one to Richard and Mahesh, as you are the two the two sort of strict, MRO businesses, pure MRO businesses on the doing in this. I mean, Richard, do you have a view on the independence versus airline?
I can comment on that, and I can certainly understand Mervyn coming up with a nice challenging question for me. So my answer to this is that I really think that there is space for both, and of course the really large airlines will want to have substantial in-house operations, both in terms of cost efficiency and also in terms of control over their supply chain. But nevertheless, I think that there's still a very significant role for independent MROs in terms of serving the wider market. You've got a lot of smaller airlines, you've got a lot of startup airlines, you've got an increasing number of LCCs for whom in-house maintenance activity is not part of their core business model, so they will continue to seek to outsource that. So I don't think that there's a case of a sort of one size fits all in this MRO market. And in the past, we've had many reports or expectations that the OEMs themselves, Boeing and Airbus in particular, would come to dominate the aftermarket space. And again, while there's plenty of areas in which they can also play a role, I don't see them necessarily either taking over the front line of aircraft and component maintenance in the longer term. So, while these competitive challenges always exist in the market, and I think they will continue to evolve and change over time, I don't think that there's a death knell yet for the independent MROs.
Mahesh, what's your view on this?
I would say the advantage for the MRO, which is associated with an airline, is during the startup, which you don't have a cost for the customer acquisition. You have an immediate customer which you can start and you can run the business, but that's not going to be there forever. Eventually, down the road, the MRO, which is associated by the airline, need to be as competitive as possible compared to the independent MRO. If not, the airlines itself at some point of time they might get fed up with you and they might move to the independent MRO. That chances are very high for that to happen. And one of the biggest challenges for the MRO, which is associated with the airline, I've said the advantage, but the challenge is down the road they should make sure that they treat both airlines, the third-party airlines and their associated airlines equally. They should not give privilege or advantage to the airlines which they are associated. That is the biggest challenge for the MRO, and they should have that in order to build the confidence for the third-party airlines. That's a must to be there. A lot of MROs, they had the tough point where if at all they've started to give privilege to the associated airline. But at the same time, the independent MRO definitely need to be there, like that. Obviously, at the end of the day, the ones who's going to benefit is the airline. They are going to benefit either from the MRO, which is associated by the airline, or an independent MRO. At the end of the day, they need to see the competition. They need to see a very positive competition, so that both of them can compete and drive the cost down for the airline. At the end of the day, the airlines are going to benefit from both. And of course, it is about maintaining the ratio, whether it's about maintaining the risk of the business. Are you going to fully depend on this particular one airline? It's about the customer, the managing the risk of the customer, right? So even if the MRO is part of the airline, they should always manage on the third-party business as well.
Right. Okay. Tom, coming out slightly from the outside, I guess,
yeah.
Do you have a view on this?
Well, yeah, I don't think that is going to be the parameters of judgment. I think there's a lot of fish in the pond. There's good, bad, and ugly with both models. I think we should have all understood that survivors are going to be those that can adapt. Richard was mentioning flexibility of model. How do you adjust to this market, and how innovative can you be to improve that USP towards the customer? For me, that is kind of the thing that we love to work with MROs, that have that entrepreneurial and innovative spirit where we can cooperate with our material flow, where this is seamless, where it is not very administrative, where it's a collaborative process on that whole check or that whole event, where everything's digital and visible, transparent and visible to the customer and also to us, so we can all align that flow of manpower and goods then in our business, and the components that go into that, or the rotables, the CNE that go into such check. I think that for me is the key thing that we focus on when we work with airlines and work with MROs. For us, it's not so, you have various in both models.
Okay, and Mary Ellen, a view from the Pratt Whitney side of things on this. I mean, did you?
Well, yeah, I would just say we've had great success partnering with a number of airlines. As we build our MRO networks, we learn from each other. It's just kind of good for business generally. But I also agree that customers like options; they like competition. So I think yes, there is room for both models. In the engine world.
Excellent. We've got about 4 minutes left. I'm going to ask one final question, and I'll just ask you all to be reasonably brief with this one. But we talked about it earlier, the whole talent and manpower and training and so on. Perhaps if you could just all talk me through how you see some of the challenges with getting the talent that you need, and what you're doing to address that, particularly in the Asia Pacific region. So let's start with Richard again on this one.
Yeah, as we went into COVID, we had too many people in our business, but we took the very conscious decision not to let anyone go, because when the market came back, when it's coming back now as it is, we saw that we would need the people to be able to cope with the demand that arises. So yeah, that turns out to have been for us a sensible decision. It has been a challenge to recruit people into the industry. It will continue to be a challenge, and I think the only way that we can achieve success in doing so is to make sure that we're partnering with schools, with colleges, to get people interested in the industry early, and to train them up and give them a satisfying career, and show that aviation, and in particular MRO, can be a very worthwhile career for them.
Excellent. We've just got a couple of minutes left, so very, very quickly, let's ask Mary Ellen this one as well.
Yeah, we, unlike HAECO, we did reduce our employment in the region during COVID, but now we are staffing back up. And fortunately, we are able to bring back some of our colleagues who had left. We're bringing in, technical school graduates, and we are looking now to different, less traditional skill sets like digitization, people with those skill sets. And we've had luck meeting our objectives so far this year. So I think we're figuring it out.
Great, thank you. Mahesh, very quickly. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, exactly like what Richard said. I mean, when airlines were retrenching people and all like that, we try to retain them. We try to have them. We try to train them for different set of skills. I mean, before this, we were specialized in line maintenance. We train them and we put them for base maintenance. On top of it, we have plans to tie up with training schools, try to develop new talents in Malaysia.
Excellent. Okay, and very quickly, Tom, just to finish with you.
Yeah, for us, it's promoting from within, developing from within, and one big angle is diversity. It's only 20% of the workforce, I think, in this industry is female, 8% in leadership. So for us, that has been a focus and a piece of work that we continue to be doing. The rest, I agree with what's been said.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you for being brief and for being very succinct. That just about brings us to the end of the webinar today and our webinar series for 2021. We are, however, back on the 27th of January, just ahead of the Singapore Airshow, with another Asia-Pacific focused discussion. And this time we're going to be focusing on some of the themes we talked about today, technological innovation in aviation, from urban air mobility to sustainable propulsion to advanced lightweight materials. I hope you can join us then. In the meantime, thank you to our 4 speakers today for giving so generously of their time. Thank you particularly to Pratt Whitney for sponsoring today, and to Mary Ellen, who I think probably had the most challenging alarm clock of all of us this morning, for joining us in the middle of the night from Mexico City, despite the technological problems of getting connected via Zoom. So thank you all very much for that. Thank you for those of you who asked questions, and I hope you enjoyed the webinar. If it's not too early, let me all wish you a very happy holiday season and a prosperous new year. See you in 2022.